Bono's got a shyster kind of magnetic attractor somewhere in his being. I don't know how he does it, but he has. So this is the secret agenda I was talking about right at the top. And the movie, and of course the Obama scenes in the movie were, crikey, really effective. This is how it's hidden. And it's come to money. Because the control of money and the creation of money is fundamental to controlling the people. And the Rothschilds are the biggest controllers of the money system on the planet. And what they've done brilliantly, at one time, everyone knew that. But they've brilliantly hidden the extent of their power, which has expanded, not got smaller. But the perception of Rothschild control has disappeared compared with what it was on public display. We don't ask big questions. So here's another big question. Where does money come from? What is money? And when you ask that question, you find that it's just a figment of our imagination. When you go into a bank and you ask for a loan, say $50,000, the bank doesn't print any money or move any precious metal anywhere. It just types into your account $50,000 and you start paying them interest on that money that has not, does not, and will never exist. Just credit, figures on a screen. Because the same network of families have controlled the politicians as have controlled the banking network, they have had legislation passed under something called fractional reserve lending that allows them to lend at least 10 times what they have on deposit. So every time you put $1 in a bank, you're giving them the right to lend at least 10, 9, 10. But it's far more than that in actual fact. That's the minimum it is. And so that's how money comes into circulation. But like I say, it's more than that. So if I get 20,000, say I go into a bank and I ask for $50,000 and they give me a check which represents figures on a screen that they've created out of nothing. I then go to another bank and I'll put it in another bank. That bank can now lend 10 times that $50,000 which has already been created out of nothing by Bank A. So now I write a check for, say, $20,000. I want to buy a car or something. And the person I buy the car off puts this $20,000 in his bank. This bank now can lend 10 times that $20,000, which comes from the $50,000 that this bank lent 10 times on, which was created out of nothing by Bank A. And so it goes on round and round and round as that non-existent money moves. And this is how the banking system works. And people are being thrown out of their homes for not paying back money that doesn't exist, never has existed. It's just figures on a screen. Third world debt is the same. And there's another thing. If you control the creation of money, then you control whether we have a boom or a bust. Because you have a boom when there's lots of money in circulation, which creates economic activity. People need to buy more things, therefore make more things, there's more jobs and all the rest of it. You push interest rates down and people take more and more loans out. They get more and more confident because the job's doing well, the company's doing well, so they have another holiday in a bigger house and they borrow more money. But that's not a problem, they say, because everything's going well. And then at the optimum time, and we've just had it, they pull money out of circulation. Just figures on a screen, they pull them out. They'll push interest rates up, or they'll stop issuing credit. And what they're doing is taking money out of circulation. As they do that, there's not the same amount of money for the same economic activity that was there before, so people can't buy more things, so more things are not made, and fewer things are made, and so you have a depression. And the banks have been doing this for hundreds of years, throwing the fishing line out, more money in circulation, whoops, credit crunch, pulling it back in, and they're taking all the assets and what have you that they took in as collateral for the loans for non-existent money. And we've just had a massive version of that, and it's not finished yet by any means. This man, Alan Greenspan, all these illustrations like this, by the way, are by a man called David Deese, who's an American living in Sweden. He does fantastic political art. Alan Greenspan was head of the Federal Reserve in America from the Reagan-Bush administration through Father Bush, through the Clintons, through most of Boy Bush. And through that period, regulation, financial regulation was just destroyed. And eventually a free-for-all took place, and the consequences of that came just after just by coincidence, Greenspan left the Federal Reserve, which is a privately owned cartel of private banks, not the Central Bank of America as it's told. And so at the optimum time, towards the end of the Bush administration, they pulled the plug on this boom, this credit boom, which had been manipulated and engineered to get right out of hand. And people will say this just quickly. People say, well, yeah, but all the bankers lose and all that stuff. Hold on. No, they don't. Some bankers lose. The people that own certain banks or run certain banks lose, but the people that control the system, they don't lose. If you control the European Football Champions League, you don't care if Manchester United beat Barcelona or the other way around, because you own the game. You can't bloody lose. And these families own the game. They own the system. Therefore, if this bank goes down, that doesn't matter, because they own this bank and they own the system anyway, and it doesn't matter because they own the system. And that's what we need to understand to appreciate why if a few banks go down, it doesn't matter to these people. It can be very beneficial. So what they did was get people into debt while they were watching the football and having a beer. Oh, it's great. Who's going to win the Super Bowl? And oh, you go. And then they crashed it, and all hell's breaking loose in America. Oh, you go. And then they crashed it, and all hell's breaking loose in America. It's far worse. I was there for 2 months, early part of this year. I mean, there's tent cities in the bloody cities. You know, it's like you don't see it on the news very much, but there's tent cities. There's people who a few months ago, had what they call in America middle-class jobs. They were selling cars and doing all this stuff. Now they're living in tents. It's a catastrophe in America, and it's being hidden at the moment for reasons that I'll come to. So then they bring in this guy, Henry Paulson, who was the chief executive and head of Goldman Sachs until 2006, and then became Treasury Secretary, just in time to be the man that said the only way to react to this credit crunch and all the catastrophe caused by the banks is to borrow vast amounts of money that the taxpayer will have to repay and give it to the same bloody banks that caused the problem, including Goldman Sachs while he was chief executive. And so all this money's now been poured at the banks, trillions, and it has changed nothing. They're hiding the fact that it's changed nothing for now, but not for much longer. So then we had this difference. Here we have Bush justifying this throwing money at banks. I won't read it all because I want to get through, because time is short with all I want to get through. But one of the things he said to people on a television broadcast, if you own a business or a farm, you will find it harder and more expensive to get credit. More businesses would close their doors and millions of Americans could lose their jobs if we don't give trillions of dollars, billions in his case, it became trillions, to the very banks that have caused the problem. And then we had a change of presidency and everything changed. And Mr. Fake said, economists from across the spectrum have warned that if we don't act immediately, millions more jobs will be lost and the national unemployment rates will approach double digits. More people will lose their homes and their health care, and our nation will sink into a crisis that at some point we may be unable to reverse. Reptilian brain, oh, do it. Except that large numbers of Americans are not happy with them doing it because times are changing and people are getting wise to a lot of this stuff. Again, be afraid, be very afraid, because we've now invented the monster. It's called the credit crunch and fearing your financial future. And so what does Obama do? He then brings in to solve the problem the very people who caused the problem. There's a cartel of private banks constitute the Federal Reserve, which is officially the Central Bank of America, but it's a private banks. The most important one and influential one is the Federal Reserve Bank of New York. Decisions that they made fundamentally brought about this credit crunch that we're looking at. The head of the New York Federal Reserve Bank was Tim Geithner. What happened to him after the catastrophe he caused? Obama made him Treasury Secretary to decide how to react to the problem. He also brought in Larry Summers, who is the banker's boy, a man who in 1991 signed a memo when he was chief economist for the World Bank, advising the World Bank to dump its toxic materials in third world poor countries because the cost of compensation for the death and injury that would follow would be less than in a Western country. Obama made him one of his key economic people, and Paul Volcker, head of the Federal Reserve for a long time before Alan Greenspan. Here we go. Two for the money. Bankers' boys who helped to cause the problem are now solving the problem. And interestingly, a few days ago in Greece, there was the 2009 meeting of the Bilderberg Group, in secret, of course. And there, because there's people now that let certain real journalists have membership lists or attendee lists. In Greece, at this secret Bilderberg meeting, was Tim Geithner, Treasury Secretary of America, Larry Summers, another major in the three of the economic team of Obama, Paul Volcker, the other one in Obama's economic team, and Robert Zoellick, head of the World Bank. Every single one of these people are Zionists. Just a coincidence? Nothing to worry about.